In this video, I want to review complex numbers. And the first thing you need to know about complex numbers is that the square root of -1 is I, and that I squared is a -1. So how does this come in handy? Let's say that you have the square root of -3. But what you can do is you can pull out this negative sign as an I, right? And you will have I square root of 3. Or sometimes you have a negative sign already outside. So this negative sign stays. This negative sign right here comes out as an I, and you'll have the square root of 7 left over. We can't simplify that one. That one is prime. Or you can have something like this, right? The negative sign comes out as an I, but then you have to simplify the 99. We know that 99 is the same thing as 9 times 11. We can pull this 9 out as a 3. So we have 3i square root of 11. That would be the answer for this one. Alright, we can also have these examples. We already said that we can pull out this negative sign as an I. And then you have to think, how can I simplify 160? Well, 160 is the same thing as 16 times 10. And the 16 can come out as a 4. So your answer would be 4i radical 10. This negative sign can come out as an I. This 81 can come out as a 9. And the y squared can come out as 1y. So there's nothing left inside the square root. Everything's gone, so the whole square root is gone. And your answer would be 9y with an I. Here we can pull out that negative sign as an I. So you have this. And then you have to ask yourself 24. 6 times 4. Yeah. Like this 4 is a square root. I mean a perfect square, which can come out as a 2, right? So this is 2i square root of 6. This one already has a negative sign outside. And the negative sign, this one can come out as an I. Right? And then we have square root of 121 y cubed x squared. The 121 can come out as an 11. Right? The x squared can come out as an x. And the y cubed is y squared times y, right? And this one can come out as a y. Where are we going to put the y? And we have a y left over. So let's see if we can write this. It would be 11xy. It's negative. And we have an I over here, right? And then the square root of y. Something else that you have to do is simplify powers of I. And the hints that you have to remember, the pattern that you have to remember is I1, I1. And the 2 in the middle are negative. Right, and this one refers, this is I to the first. This is I squared, this is I cubed, this is I to the 4th. And in terms of decimals, this is 0.25, 0.50, 0.75, and this is no decimal. So give me a whole. And I'll show you what I mean when you take your power. So if you have something like this, I to the 37. So then you take 37 and you divide it by 4. You get 9.25. And you see 0.25, that means the answer is I. This is just I. Or if you have I to the 70, I'm totally making this up right now, 76. And you say 76 divided by 4. And you get 19. And you see how you got no decimal? That means the answer is 1. So this is equal to 1. And that's how you would simplify powers of I. How would we simplify these powers? Well, you would multiply these two. 47 times 2 is 94. And we have an I, so the answer is 94I. This one, you have to pull out that negative sign, so you actually have I radical 5 times 2I. The 2 times the radical 5 is this. And then the I times the I is I squared. And we've already established that I squared is a negative 1. So this becomes negative 2 radical 5, right? That becomes a negative sign right there. Right, for a problem like this, I would take out this negative sign. And I would take out that also, that negative sign. And we have negative I times I. And then radical 3 times radical 7, which is radical 21. But then I squared is a negative 1. And the negative of a negative 1 is a positive 1, right? You write out if you want to. This becomes positive. So the answer is just radical 21. Alright, let's say that you're trying to add what you can do is you can just drop the parentheses because it is addition and the signs are not going to change. And then just combine the real parts. It's a negative 1. In this one, it's going to be a 2i. So you combine the real parts and you combine the imaginary parts. And this would be your answer. If you were subtracting them, you have to make sure that you distribute that negative sign. So you actually have, right, that becomes positive, that becomes negative. And then you combine the real parts. That gives you minus 4. And then this one and this one gives you minus 6i. So that would be the answer here. Let's say you were trying to multiply. Well, this is just distribution. So you get negative 21 minus negative 28i. And that would be that answer. And if you're trying to multiply these are essentially two binomials, if you want to think about it like that, two terms. So you use the distributive property. So 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times negative 6i is negative 42i. Negative 2i times 2 is negative 4i. And negative 2i times negative 6i is positive 12i squared. And then you can see that the two middle terms are like terms, so we can combine that. Minus 46i. And then this right here. You see that I squared? That I squared is a negative 1. So 12 times negative 1 is a negative 12. And then you have to consider that this is real and this is real, so we need to combine them. 14 minus 12 is 2. So this is 2 minus 46i. You're multiplying conjugates. The conjugate for this one would be 4 minus 3i. And this works the same way. 4 times 4 is 16. This one times this one is minus 12i. This one is plus 12i. And minus 9i squared. And what do you notice about the middle terms? They cancel. Right, So we have 16. What do we say about I squared? I squared is a negative 1. Negative 9 times negative 1 is a positive 9, so it changes the sign. So we can see when you multiply conjugates that the middle terms are going to cancel. So one of the things that I tell you in class if you know you're multiplying conjugates, just worry about the real parts. 4 times 4 is 16, and the imaginary parts. Right? Because the middle terms are going to cancel anyway. But this, you only do this when you're multiplying conjugates. If they're not conjugates, then you have to work out the middle terms as well, because you will get a middle term. Alright, division now. You have something like this, 4 over 7i. How do you get rid of the I? Well, you multiply top and bottom by I. And you multiply across. 4 times I is 4i. 7i times I is 7i squared. And what is I squared? Negative 1. So this is 4i over negative 7. Or negative 4/7 I. To be more correct. See how you have a sum here in the bottom? The only way to get rid of that is to multiply by the conjugate, top and bottom. Right? The conjugate, you just change the sign in the middle. And these are in parentheses because they're sums. Alright, so your numerator is 12 times 5 minus I. And your denominator is 5 plus I times 5 minus I. Now at the bottom, the denominator are conjugates. So remember, we're just going to multiply the imaginary parts and the real parts. So 5 times 5 is 25. And this is minus I squared. So this is 25 plus 1, which is 26. So we know the denominator is 26. 2 goes into these, right? So you have 6 over 13 times 5 minus I. Or 30 minus 6i. Right? Yep. Yes, these would be the final answers. Obviously, you can rewind so that you can see it more clearly, but I'm going to assume that if something went too quick for you, that you're going to rewind and watch it again. If I go slower, then the video takes longer. Alright, so now I have to get rid of the denominator. And remember, the only thing that changes is the middle sign. So this is minus 4 minus 3i. Minus 4 minus 3i. And now I have to multiply both the top and the bottom. Alright, so I'm going to work out my numerator here. Three times negative 4. 3 times this. Negative 2 times that is positive 8i. That times this is plus 6i squared. The middle becomes, and this becomes minus 6, right? Because the I squared becomes a negative 1. And minus 12 minus 6 is minus 18i. Minus 18 minus I. Alright, that's the numerator. The denominator. The denominator are conjugates right? So I'm just going to multiply the tops. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. And the bottom is minus 9 I squared. In the imaginaries, I mean. I squared becomes negative 1, so this is 16 plus 9, which is 25. So my answer is minus 18 minus I over 25. Okay? So I'll make another video with more practice examples. But for now, this is essentially what you need to know about complex numbers.